Privyet, my little conscripts, and welcome to another Mordian Glory video. And oh boy, do I have a spicy meatball for your viewing pleasure today, because I played an absolutely massive game of bolt action. 12,000 points on the table, dozens of armoured vehicles, and hundreds of infantry. It was Soviets versus Germans. This is the Battle of Berlin. So before we get into the game itself, I want to say a few thank yous. Firstly, I want to say a massive thank you to all of the guys involved who made this battle possible. Neil, Joe, Sai, Ant, and Paul. Without those guys, this game could not have happened. And honestly, they brought their all to it. They embraced it wholeheartedly. And tabletop gaming is very much a social thing. And you can't have a good time without good players. I'm just going to say it. These guys are the best players. Ton of fun to play with and looking forward to doing this again in the future. I also want to do a highlight for Neil and Joe, who were the respective captains. Neil was on the German team and Joe was my captain over on the Soviet team, and those two had actually come up with the scenario. They'd come up with the format, with the game system for making a game of bolt action of this size actually work, because any of you that have played bolt action, whether it's first, second or third edition, will know that it's more of a small scale game. It's a platoon being operated by each player, maybe a platoon supported by a few tanks. But when you get up to like 12,000 points, it starts looking like an apocalypse-sized game. It's fantastic. With the game not being fundamentally designed for that, these guys have put in some incredible work for coming up with a very simple, yet very, very effective way of making it work. And I'll be sharing with you how all of that works, well, right now. So naturally, this game did take place on a larger board. You need something a bit bigger so that you can fit all the terrain on and fit all the models on without it becoming a traffic jam. Now, fundamentally, we are using the core bolt action rules. So we roll to hit normally, roll to wound normally, cover safe taken normally. We're using normal hard cover. We're using fortification rules for things like the trenches from in the book. So if you are familiar with playing by action, then it's very easy for you to absorb this game system. There's just a few high level things that sit above the game that make it work at this scale. Firstly, we have the string. Now, this piece of string is very, very important. It represents the front lines. It's the furthest point of advance for the attackers. So it starts off at the edge of the Soviet deployment zone, and you can see this was roughly the edge of where our deployment zone was. And then at the end of each turn, it is moved to show the furthest point of the Soviet advance. So you can see we had some infiltrating units here, so we were able to get the string quite far up to the halfway point very quickly in the game. This provides a really good benefit to taking infiltrators and not just, so they don't just get isolated and die like they would do in a game like this. Veteran infiltrators can push the string forward. Now, why would you want to push the string forward? Well, that's where your reinforcements come in from. If we use the normal bolt action rules and we had reinforcements coming in from this edge, anything that came in even after turn 2 or turn 3 would never get up the board. It would spend the whole game just running and then not actually being able to get to objectives or do any fighting. But by having the string, it means that you can advance your front line forwards, put pressure on the enemy, and then when your reinforcements come in, you can put them into places maybe where you want to push the front line a bit further forward if it's struggling, or take advantage of any ground that you have taken and start breaking through. It's a really good way of getting units into the fight and also encouraging players to be aggressive early on. Now, you'll also notice that we have got these tokens on the ground. We've got the cross for the Germans and we've got the hammer and sickle for the Soviets. These were actually handmade by Neil's wife. So big 07 in the chat for her, because they're really, really cool and they're really well done. They're laminating everything. And what you do is, rather than deploying your reinforcements normally, At the end of each turn, each player can put down a certain number of reinforcements, and you write down on the back of the token and place it face down what those reinforcements are going to be. So each side can see where the other one is massing up reinforcements, but they don't know exactly what's going to be there. This is really good because it means that you're not sure if they're going to put all tanks on one side or if they're going to put infantry on one side or have a mix. So you kind of have to try and play this mind game, this game of cat and mouse, and try and work out where the best place for your reinforcements is going to be without having all of the information. Really adds an extra layer of tactical and strategic depth to the game. You might be wondering, what is the point of the tokens? Don't your reinforcements just come on normally? Well, this is where one of these other mechanics comes in. Your reinforcements don't arrive until turn 4, the end of turn 4, going into turn 5. So essentially each player, each turn, is allowed to put down a certain number of tokens. It depends on how many units are in your army, which team you're on, all that kind of stuff. And you have to put down a certain number of tokens. So this means at the end of turn 1, you put down a few. End of turn 2, you put down a few, so on and so forth. This means that you can build your reinforcements up where you think they are going to be most needed as the evolving battlefield situation becomes clear. And the last special mechanic that we had was the dice bag. Now obviously, with there being potentially like 50-60 units on each side, the dice bag would start getting very confusing if we had to put 120 dice in there and pulling them out one unit at a time. That would take forever. People's dice would get mixed up. We wouldn't know whose dice was for whose units. It would be crazy. So what happens is, rather than putting a dice per unit for each player in the dice bag, you work out which player on each team has got the most dice on the battlefield to a maximum of 18. So let's say on the Soviet team we've got 3 players. One person's got 12 dice, 12 units on the field of battle at that time. Second player's got 15. The third player's got 17. Soviet team would put 17 dice in the bag because the most dice from one of our players is 17. Same with the Germans. Let's say the most dice from one of their players is 15. They'd put 15 dice in the bag. Then what would happen is when you reach in and pull a dice out of the bag, let's say you pull a Soviet dice out, each Soviet player gets to activate 1 unit. So, for example, if we pull a Soviet dice out, I would be able to activate a conscript, Joe would be able to activate a T-34, and Paul would be able to activate maybe a unit of engineers. You pull 1 dice out, then each player gets to make 1 activation. And then, of course, throughout the turn, some players are going to run out of dice first. That's fine, because then it just ends up with, at the end of the turn, there'll be a couple of units left over for one player who just needs to quickly move those around. So in our case, Paul had often the most dice. And so what would end up happening is we'd get to the end of a turn, the Germans would be out of dice, Soviets out of dice, and then Paul would have 1 or 2 units that you just have to quickly move around. It made it really quick and really seamless. You might be wondering, how does like snap 2s and stuff work? Each player still has their own personal pool of dice. So there'd be, again, use the Soviets example, there'd be 17 dice in the bag. If I had 15 dice in my army, we'd pull a Soviet dice out, we'd all get to activate. If I wanted to do a snap 2, I would use 1 dice from my personal pool, and then I'd activate, let's say, 2 other units at the same time for the snap 2. This would mean that I would run out of personal pool dice very early on, but we wouldn't be having to pull extra dice out of the bag for the Soviets, because it's just the maximum number of units we have in there would have been 17. That makes sense. So essentially there's a group pool that goes into the bag, and then snap 2s and stuff are done from a personal pool. And that's really it. That's all of the extra mechanics. The piece of string, the reinforcement tokens, and the group pool. Other than that, it's a normal game about action, and let me tell you, it really works. Just having those 3 mechanics allows you to play games at this size very easily. And truly, I think you could scale these games up to be even bigger. I think you could have 20,000 points on a table, 5 players on each side, and it would run buttery smooth. That explains the high level stuff. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. What was the mission? What were both sides trying to achieve? The Soviets were on the attack. It's the Battle of Berlin. We're trying to crush the Germans. And there were 6 objectives that the Soviets had to take. Across the middle of the board, you'll see there's these 3 train carriages. Each one of those needed to be captured. However, they were wired with explosives and they were meant to represent water barrels. If the Soviets captured them and then didn't defuse them, they could explode, doing damage around the to units around, and maybe even flooding the various sectors of the board, making it difficult terrain. That would be obviously bad because it would slow the Soviet advance. But whether they were destroyed or not, capturing each one of those would yield 2 points to the Soviet team. There was then another set of objectives towards the back. You can just sort of see them poking out here. Segments of barrels. These were to represent ammo caches, fuel caches, and those were towards the back of the board. Each one of those was worth 3 points. So if the Germans lost the front objectives, but held all of the back objectives, they would still win because the Soviets have 6 points and the Germans would have 9 points. So the Soviets needed to not only capture a minimum of these 3, but we also needed to try and capture one of the back objectives as well. If that was done, then victory would be achieved. In terms of the points on both sides, there were 6,000 points for the Soviets, 2,000 per player, and there was about 5,250 on the German team. I think it was about 1,750 per player. There were no rules regarding units in terms of historical accuracy. If you had some late war stuff or some early war stuff mixed in, that was fine. The guiding rule was do your best to try and have your armies as appropriately themed as possible, but we're not going to exclude anyone from bringing any units, because at the end of the day, this is a rather unique situation, unique scenario, and not everyone's armies are going to be geared up to have the right units. So if you see something that you're like, oh, that wouldn't have been there in the Battle of Berlin, that's fine. It doesn't matter whatsoever. We were just trying to get, on the Soviet side, we were just trying to get every tank we had into the field. There was also an element of don't try and cheese the scenario either. It would have been obviously very possible for the Germans to just go all veterans all the way, dig into cover, and just made it an absolute nightmare for us to try and dig them out. That would have been relatively unfun for both sides, I think. So what the German players did is they made sure they had a mix. They had some inexperienced shirkers on the front lines, and then there were some very elite fanatical SS units as well, and Fallschirmjäger and stuff like that. So there really was a true mix of quality over on the German side, and likewise on the Soviet side. We had regulars, we had waves of conscripts, and we had veterans. But that's enough pre-game preamble. Let's get into the big battle. So it starts off with relatively few models on the board. There's just some initial German defenders manning the trench networks, and the Soviets start off with their artillery and with some veteran infantry on the board. We take a look at the left flank. You can see a unit of Soviet veteran scouts here. They are trying to make sure that string is getting pushed forward as far as possible. And opposite them is a unit of SS fanatics holding the trench. On this side of the board, it was initially Joe on my side, and it was Ant on the German side. As there's also, we had some, these are Bren carriers, but they represented T-20 Cosmoplots, which they're basically the same thing. And we also had a BA-6 over here. So we had some light armor, some spotters in the forests, and some veterans pushing up on the left. The mid was pretty light for us. We just plonked down our 4 mortars, and we made sure we had spotters positioned at key locations on the middle, the left, and also there's some on the far right flank over here as well. So we can basically see all of the German front line, and we can just start bombarding it. Facing off against us was 2 units of inexperienced German infantry. Finally, on the right flank, starting in our deployment zone, we had 2 units of Soviet infantry. This is a unit of engineers with a flamethrower, and then we had a unit of regulars with a couple of LMGs, and then pushing forward another unit of Soviet scouts. The The Germans on this side were pretty dug in from the get-go, with a big pack gun and an MMG team dug in behind these barricades, as well as a Marder 3. So the Germans starting off with a relatively impressive piece of armor. Not the heaviest, Marder obviously only being 7+, but with a big gun. So there's lots of anti-tank over here. The Soviets did get to benefit from a preparatory bombardment at the beginning of the game, but there were no casualties caused by it that I can remember. Lots of pins were doled out, but that was about it. Now, I'm just going to click through some of these pictures. A lot of them are sort of highlighting little bits that happened over the first few turns. But the first 4 turns were really a positional battle. Both sides working out where they thought the main enemy thrust was going to be, trying to bring in reinforcements to cover things, and just feeling the ground and trying to hold the line. So you can see over here, the Germans commanded by Sai, beautifully painted German army here. They started getting the worst of it. They took some good hits from the preparatory bombardment. Lots of pins being spread out everywhere. And then, to be honest, we started shelling the crap out of them as well. These are the inexperienced guys in the center. And then these are Ants, very veteran SS holding the left flank. Now, first turn, like I said, this is the preparatory bombardment. There wasn't a huge amount that really happened. Scouts moved forward and both sides started placing down their reinforcements. Now, there was a little bit of a mistake made at this point by the German team. They sort of went into autopilot and put all of their reinforcements down at the end of the turn. Whereas you see the Soviets really put down like a few. We did catch it and we did say to the German players, do you want to like just take them off? We do it, but they're like, nah. To be honest, they were like, we're probably going to end up here anyway. We've kind of planned out where our defense is going to be, and this is kind of what where we want to end up. And so we're like, fair enough. Also, it kind of worked out quite well narratively, with the Germans being much more dug in statically. And it did give the Soviets a bit of an advantage, I won't lie, because it did mean that we knew where their concentration of reinforcements was going to be, and that helped us decide where we thought our reinforcements could go. Moving into the second turn, and you can see that the casualties are starting to be inflicted. All of these bits of fiery smoke represent the mortars coming in and absolutely pounding Sai's positions. His MMG team and his pack gun took furious damage, and actually I think we ended up killing the MMG team on turn 2 and started zoning in on the pack gun very effectively as well. As for the left flank, you can see that we're starting to stage our fast movers up behind the forest. We don't want them to get lit up by any machine gun fire or by any potential anti-tank. There is like potentially anti-tank lurking around here. Got to be careful of the Marder threading the needle, firing shots across here as well. So we're just sort of staging up behind the forest and getting ready to start pushing forward, because we do have minefields to deal with. Minefield here, barbed wire, minefield here, tank traps, and these have got engineers in them. So we really want to be able to move up, clear out these obstacles, and then push into the city proper. We've got a few close-ups of where various units were here. You can see this is where the Bren carriers are. Got some reinforcements coming in behind those carriers. You can see all of the mortars raining down on the MMG team. The Soviet scouts here start trying to cut through the barbed wire. Obviously, they're not engineers, so it will take them a little while. But the longer that they are there, just going down, the better they will get at cutting the wire. And here you can see we're starting to mass up reinforcements. We think that there's a lack of anti-tank over on this side. We're kind of hoping that there is anyway. And that the Germans are going to rely upon maybe the density of terrain to try and slow us down and traffic jam us. But we think that if we can start stacking up armor on the left, that will allow us to punch through and take one of those vital battlefield objectives. So pretty much all of these tokens that you see here end up being tanks or support for the tanks. And then we get to the end of turn 3. So didn't take too many action shots of turn 3 itself, but this is the situation at the end of it. So you can see over here on the right flank, pack gun is gone, the mortars are gone, and the Marder, we've started to range in on that and on the sniper as well. So what ended up happening here is the mortar died at the end of turn 2. In turn 3, the pack gun had taken a few pins. It ended up foobarring and panicking, and it broke and ran off the board. So that was a very lucky break for the Soviets over here, because between that pack gun and these minefields, this was a tough nut to crack. And now that allows our mortars to move to the second line. So we've shelled and shelled and shelled this. Now we're on to the second line, hitting the Marder, which obviously it's dug in. The Marder is dug in, and tanks which are dug in can't move. So it's dug in there. And so it's just got to sit there whilst we just zone in on it. And then we've also got the sniper team that's up here, which has started to like threaten to pick off some of our infantry. You see we're starting to take some pins and stuff down here. So it's tough. You know, we've cleared one line. The objective is in sight, but you can see the Germans are starting to stack up a lot of reinforcements. You can also see that we're getting a little bit of the horns, the buffalo style situation here, because we're not really pushing in the mid. We do put some reinforcements down there to try and bait the Germans to do the same thing. And as you can see, they do that. In fact, one of our units here is the ISU 152, and the plan was just to have that just lobbing shells into the infantry in here, into whatever reinforcements appear here. We're pretty confident there's going to be a tank there, but the idea is just to keep them busy, keep their heads down. And so what we're doing is we're all of these units here have got one objective: to take this, to clear this out. All of these units here have got actually 3 objectives they want to do. 1, 2, and then 3 back here. Center, we're just going to try and keep the Germans busy, and when eventually our mortars end up killing everything on this side, just start using our indirect fire to soften the Germans up here and keep their heads down. One important thing that happened was Paul got his engineers onto this unit of tank traps, but they kept not being able to destroy it. Even like a 2-up at one point, they just couldn't destroy it. They did eventually get it, but it took a bit longer than expected, and that meant that we kind of had to redirect where a lot of our armor was going to go, because you can see on this next picture how many tokens we've got stacked up here. Many of this is tanks, and we place those at the end of the turn after we've had a go at trying to clear the tank tracks and stuff. And so you can see we're getting pounded on that side as well. Germans, just better shot there. Classic shot of all of the people making decisions and everything. Serious concentration going on Ant's face there. Lines being checked. Neil, you know, pointing out who's trying to shoot and all this kind of stuff. Reinforcements behind on the right flank there. But you can see, going back to this angle, you can see how much armor we've got stacked up here. Now, ideally, we'd want stuff being able to push down the road. But with these tank traps just refusing to go, we have to kind of place our reinforcements a lot more bunched up and a lot more concentrated here. Not necessarily a bad thing having forced concentration, but traffic jams are a thing. And so we then get to the end of turn 4. Now, up until this point, the first few turns, like I said, just been kind of positional. We've been pushing the string as far forward as possible, trying to clear some of these obstacles, just stacking our reinforcements up. And that really was turn 4. Both sides started taking a few casualties. The right flank is looking a bit open. The left flank is looking very strong for the Germans. But we have decided to dedicate a truly staggering amount of armor to this cause. And now it was time to go into turn 5, where the battle was truly going to begin. It was time to reveal our reinforcements. And here we go. Look at all that Soviet armor. Oh my god. T-34, KV-1, T-34, 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 IS-2, BA-6, conscripts, veterans. We've got veterans in the truck here. Look at this push. Look at this push. We are ready to roll over those German positions. And facing off against on the German side, we've got those veterans, of course. We've got those veteran SS in the trench. But they're only armed with a couple of Panzerfaust. And then we've got a pack gun here. There's a mortar here. There's an officer here, mortar here. Basically, 2 thin lines of infantry stand between us and getting to our objective. But we do have to be careful, because back here, just poking out and covering the road, as well as being able to cover an angle across here, is the mighty Flak 88. So this obviously looks very good for the Soviets, but you have to bear in mind that most of our infantry down here are conscripts. Most of the Germans are fanatical veteran SS. So it's going to be very difficult for us to push through these, because just to give you an idea of what these fortifications do, these ones and these ones, as long as you don't move, you count as down, even without doing the down order. So you can stay up and fire and be in hard cover with the benefit of down, giving you a 2+ save. So this looks like an easy thing to push through, but there are Panzerfaust in these squads. There's a squad off camera just here that's got Panzerfaust. There's actually a surprising amount of Panzerfausts and anti-tank here, and this infantry is going to be quite tough. But when we saw this, we didn't really appreciate the Panzerfausts. Everyone's kind of dismissed them in 3rd edition because they're kind of expensive. We didn't really appreciate them, but a little bit of foreshadowing here. After this game, this push, I have a great appreciation for the Panzerfaust now. And just look at that action shot, boys. Charging forwards. Oh my god. All of my heavy armor was on this flank, boys. All 4 of my and my BA6, all of my armor was over here. I said I was going to bring a lot of tanks, and I brought 3 T-34s, I brought a KV, and I brought a BA6. And we still had other armor to throw into the fight as well. The perspective from these poor... Well, I don't feel too much sympathy for them, let's be honest here. But the perspective from these poor SS soldiers, as they can see these tanks rolling past the objective. Oh, my days. Now, over on the other flank, we went for pretty much a dedicated infantry push. All of this stuff is infantry. Pretty much all of it is inexperienced infantry as well. The only armor we put over here was a BA6 or BA7, BT7. That's it. BT7, which actually survived, a decent amount of time. It absorbed a lot of firepower before eventually going down. We kind of chucked the BA7 over here because we did feel like we were just traffic jamming up here. In hindsight, maybe it would have been better to have the BA to spread some of the other armor, like have the ISU here. I think our armor should have been concentrated like this. Instead, we had a decent amount on the left flank from our perspective. This is from the German perspective, so the right flank from their perspective, of course. And then it's sort of, we had a few isolated units. Benefit of hindsight, boys, our armor should have been more extended out to here, so we could have hit multiple positions. And we could have maybe forced some of the German attention this way, so that they couldn't just start shooting over from the center into the right, because that actually started becoming a problem. However, end of turn 5, things were looking a bit dicey for the Germans, especially on their left flank, our right flank. Simon's Germans here, with the Marder and the half-track both going down in the same turn. We were zoning in on the Marder anyway, and eventually we just got the shot to take it out. And then I was lucky, and one of the last shots of the turn, I dropped a medium mortar on top of the command tank. I got the lucky 6. This is a command half-track. I got the lucky 6, and boom, we knocked it out. So the second line of the Germans here really starting to crumble, really starting to struggle. Now, the majority of my forces were located over on the Soviet left flank. And this is the position on that flank at the end of turn 5. End of turn 6, sorry. So yeah, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. So turn 5, everyone starts turning, we're all start blasting each other. Turn 6, the Soviets start going. And in the turn 5, the KV flamethrowed a lot of the Germans here, but they passed their morale check because they're fanatics. They just take it unmodified. And then the KV got knocked out by the King Tiger. And so we were like, damn, that KV was like a really key part, because it was a KV with a flamethrower. That KV was a really key part of us clearing these trenches out. And with it going down, how the hell are we meant to dig them out? Because they were going to be like a 2-up save. So what we ended up doing, full credit to Joe, he remembered there's a rule in the book where if you're a dug-in German infantryman, dug-in infantryman holding a trench. If a tank assaults that trench, any models that it lands on top of are destroyed because they essentially get buried in the trench. The tank wiggles its tracks and they get buried in the trench. So what we started doing is actually just crushing the German defenses. And so this T-34 here, it drove forward on its assault move and crushed, we wiggled its tracks a little bit and we crushed the Germans here, and that suddenly opened up everything. It meant that, oh my god, we can actually clear these guys out without them just being on like a 2-up save. We can just like insta kill them. At the same time, the front, so that by the end of turn 6, this German line here was in deep trouble because we were crushing the Germans in their trenches, and we'd also managed to knock out the pack gun as well by just getting within point blank range. And again, seeing this from the German perspective, just tank after tank after tank ready to roll over their position. And you can see the dead KV here, and you can see the tanks leading the way and the infantry starting to have to work their way around. The big problem with this KV dying here is it meant that the infantry had to take a longer route round. And remember, time is against us. This is the end of turn 6. This only gives us 7, 8, 9 and 10 to break through another line of defenses here, deal with any reinforcements the Germans come over with, and then we have to hold this objective at the end. And the Germans have got more and more reinforcements which they're able to start bringing up. Going into turn 7, the offensive does continue, but this is where we start suffering for not having armor in the center to distract the King Tiger, because the King Tiger is able to draw a line of sight to these to this flank, and so it slings a super heavy anti-tank round into the side of my T-34 here and takes it out. I am losing a tank a turn nearly every turn. Now, concentrating on the left flank for the time being, because that is where a lot of the action was taking place, you can see this is our position at the end of turn 8. We've got our T-34s lined up here, ready to go into the next line, and we've started bringing up our infantry, but the Germans are not giving us an inch. So over here, my T-34 ends up getting stunned slightly by some long-range Panzerfaust. This is just a 12-inch gap here, and so the Panzerfaust come streaking out into my side armor, and I'm very fortunate. I managed to one of them does get a penetrating hit, but it only rolls like a 1, and so my T-34 there does manage to survive, although it does end up taking an extra pin. But the big thing is the German infantry start counterattacking. More veterans, more fanatics, more SS charging forward, and even though we'd managed to like clear out the first line of infantry, this second line, that squad told that was a bit hidden, it came around here, and well, veteran assault rifles versus conscripts with Mosin Nagants, even with a bayonet with some balls behind it, that fight only really goes one way. Elsewhere, the Soviets are doing okay. It's a bit of a grind, it's a bit of a slog, but we are pushing forward. So you might have noticed a few more tokens coming down now. This is where our reserve force comes in. So 20% of our force was the scouting force, 50% of our force was our main army, and then we had our reserves, which came in, I think it was around turn 8, something like that, around turn 8, end of turn 8, I think we got some reserves coming in, just for like one last push kind of thing. And you can see our infantry here, even though they've been kind of at this point, the string is really struggling to advance because there's minefields and there's just we're getting sort of enfilading fire from this section here and from over here. And there's a King Tiger as well, and there's a pack gun back here, and there's a Panzer IV here. So our big conscript infantry push is starting to feel reminiscent of the Battle of the Fountain from Stalingrad, but it is grinding forward, and all these tokens here are more infantry. So we're like, look, if the infantry hasn't broken through yet, it's because we haven't applied enough infantry. So we threw more conscripts into the mix there. Like, we're mauling the Germans, but we're just struggling to take ground from the Germans on this flank. And as you can see, the center, we're starting to try and do some stuff around here, but it's becoming a bit tricky. So we're doing fine here, but we're struggling to get past these objectives, whereas over on this flank, obviously you can see we're storming through. Got some close-ups of some of the German positions. The King Tiger came into existence here from the German main reserve. That was that was scary. There was actually a flak gun here, like a quad flak or a double flak. We were able to take that out in fairly short order thanks to all of the mortars concentrating on it. Just a slightly different perspective from the state of the board as we're entering into the final sort of moments. We've done the initial push. We've scouted forward. We're breaking through the lines. We've got about 2 or 3 turns to try and seal the deal. Our main focus now is to try and hold this objective, and push forward over here. That is our main thing. Just got a few more close-ups. You can see the infantry wave. It's starting to thin out. This pin starting to come into existence, but we've got more infantry coming up here. A lone German grenadier surviving some of the counter-Soviet firepower over on the left flank. And you can see us breaking through. That first line is completely crushed. We're ready to go into the second line soon. And then just an angle from the Stug Panzer Ace, who's just slinging high explosive shots into the infantry that are advancing forward. Some more. This is Simon's sort of artillery reserve. He's got an officer here. And he's got 2 mortars just counter. As our infantry are pushing forward, he's bombarding them. Our mortars can't reach his mortars back here, so they kind of have their wicked way with us, unfortunately. Then a close-up of the pack gun. That's not a great... Let's see if we can flip that picture around. There you go. You can see, look, we're bringing our infantry up. We're bringing it up. The Germans charged in here, dealt with the conscripts, and then we counter-attacked them with these units, a regular unit and a veteran unit, and we were able to drive them off. That's why there's that lone ranger we saw before. I think there's just a few. Now we get to the beginning, end of turn 8, going into turn 9, turn 10. Here we are. So this is our reinforcing infantry wave over on the right flank. You can see we've brought in another unit of conscripts. We've got a couple of officers here. We've got some more. You can't quite see them, but behind my face, we've got another wave of conscripts down here. We actually brought a pinch of armor over here as well, the T-26. This was a little bit of a throwaway unit. It didn't actually ever get taken out by the Stug, which is fine, but we were kind of hoping that the Stug would start targeting it to try and get rid of it. And it actually did work. The Stug stopped slinging high explosive rounds into the infantry and started trying to kill the T-26, but it was protected by the spirit of Joseph Stalin's mustache, pure selenium, and the T-26 never went down. It just kept bouncing them shots. Simon kept rolling 1s on the bloody vehicle damage chart. So T-26 did its job and allowed us finally some respite on our infantry, so we can push forward and start trying to get past the objective. Because what we want to do is get past the objective so we can then get into the infantry back here. Just look at that action shot, boys. Some crazy third line reserve T-26 been thrown into the Battle of Berlin and conscripts charging along beside it. Just doing what they can to try and punish the fascists. Their land, their blood. And you can see here we've got more reinforcements coming in. Another wave of conscripts, anti-tank rifles, loads of weapon teams back here. I've thrown these conscripts into a slightly more central position because they can obviously break this way and link it with these conscripts to get to the water cart. But also they can go into the center and start keeping those guys busy as well. But time is running out for the Soviet Union. We have only got turn 9 and turn 10 left to try and take this objective. And so we launch a full Soviet armored thrust. 4 T-34s, 385s, 176, all initiate a tank assault at the same time, because we get the first dice of turn 9. We've got 2 command tanks here, one here and one here, and we've got 2 of my regular tanks here. So we snap 2 over here with all 4 of these tanks, and we push them all onto the second line of the SS. You can see them getting crushed underneath our treads, and we completely wipe out that unit using these rules that allow you to crush infantry in trenches to the best of their to the best ability, the most effectiveness. But it didn't all go our way. My second to last T-34 did die on the way in, because the Germans got to do a stand and shoot. They got to do a reaction fire. They had 2 Panzerfausts in there. I thought I should be able to handle it. I was not able to handle it. 1 Panzerfaust hit, 1 Panzerfaust missed. The one that hit got like a big pen on the front armor, I think. Ant rolled a 6, so that ended up being a 12. So it was a pen plus 3 over my front armor. I failed. I didn't even have a cover save, man. It was just a straight shot out in the open there, and it just completely popped the top off. So I'm down to 1 tank on this flank, boys. I have been losing my tanks with alarming regularity, but very thematically, it was very much the case that the Soviet Union pushed loads and loads of armor into Berlin, and the Panzerfaust, teams of German infantry armed with Panzerfaust reaped a bloody tally. And so not only is this very epic, not only is it very cool, but it's actually quite historically representative as well. Now, we were careful because we obviously didn't want to scratch Ant's models, but we did think it was cool having a picture like that of all of his guys getting crushed underneath the tanks. And there is something beautiful to behold about the sight of a full wave of T-34s just crashing through the enemy defenses. Brutal stuff. I just want to say, big shout out to Ant. He took it like a champ. Obviously, it's quite difficult being on the receiving end of all of this armor, but he did his job. He held the line, he kept slowing us down, he kept knocking out tanks. That's all he needed to do. You can see all the Soviet tank turrets flying into the air, as they are wont to do. And then this is over on the other flank. This is over on the complete opposite flank. The mighty T-26 just getting into the grill of the Stug and just be like, come on, do it. What are you waiting for? Trying to draw its fire there. You can also see our infantry waves beginning to push past that line and getting in amongst size infantry. We actually shot the crap out of them, and then I bayonet charged the last few and was able to kill them. So there's very little on this second line on the right flank now, and it looks like we've got this in the bag. To solidify our position even more, we actually, as part of our final reserve, brought forward 2 Su-76s on the right flank. Up until this point, the only armor that flank had been a BT-7, which had got popped pretty quickly, and a T-26. But we thought, you know what? We're going to bring over a couple of medium anti-tank guns here. We're going to have some more artillery. This can help bombard, because these guys can act as a light howitzer or a medium anti-tank gun. And all we need to do is just bombard the third line of Germans. We've got some, because we're aware they've got things like the Panzer IV over there. We're aware they've got things like the King Tiger. So we think if we bring this over here, we can start slinging rounds into any tanks and stuff. Try and stop any sort of last-minute German sneaky behavior. And we even start pressing in the middle as well. This is a unit of inexperienced Germans which have been hosing us down with machine guns. And my conscripts storm forward, get into point blank range, and start pouring fire into them. And we outnumber them. We're the same quality. So we are, in the final turn or two of the game, we are hitting the Germans everywhere that we can. We are trying to keep them off balance. We are trying to distract them. It really does look like the Soviets are in a very, very strong position after wading forward, struggling forward for turn after turn, we are starting to get in amongst the Germans. The Germans do a fantastic counter push. Another veteran unit, a veteran SS unit that's been held in reserve up to this point. You've got to understand that all of the stuff that was in Simon's army that was on the front line was regular. All of the stuff that was in the middle was inexperienced. They've been keeping their veterans back for an expertly timed counterattack like this, and it's really making us work for it. These guys come storming in, they start messing us up, they're behind the barbed wire, so that makes it harder for us to actually counterpunch them. It's every side is throwing everything they can into this, but the Soviets, at this point, we're feeling very confident. We've got all three objectives in the middle locked down, and we have got a straight shot to the final objective over on the left flank. It's looking good. Here you can see the state of the board at the end of turn 9. You can see the German King Tiger has started to come forward. It wasn't actually dug in here because it didn't start the game in there. They just had it in there as a bit of heavy cover. It's not actually dug in. It's just a bit of a fortification for it. So it can move out. It starts moving out from one trench line to the next. Because I've dealt with these inexperienced troops, it's trying to throw my conscripts back. And the Panzer IV comes up here as well. And so we've got this objective. We've got this objective. It's looking good. The Germans are going to go for one last push. The Soviets, we're going to go for a big push as well. This is the state of play at the end of turn 9 on this flank. Turn 9, turn 10, the turns are merging a little bit together now. But this is the state of the board at the end of around turn 9, turn 10. We're getting close to secure this objective. Remember, there's 10 to 11 turns for this game. I think this is about turn 90. I don't think we did the 11th turn. But my final tank has died. There's a Panzerschreck team which has emerged in this ruin here. My final tank has died. The only piece of armor I have left on the board is the BA6. And so we push forward here. We get onto the objective. We are now contesting this objective, which does deny the Germans those points. If we can hold on to this objective and hold on to the middle 3, there's a chance that we are going to win this game and our plan is going to come to fruition. But then turn 10. Victory was in our grasp. But those damn dastardly Germans, they couldn't let us have it. Over on the right flank, the Panzer IV comes up here and contests this objective on the last turn. Now what's funny is the Simon had very few units left at this point. So he actually had to do that relatively early. He wanted to wait until the end to do that, obviously, because he doesn't want to risk taking it out. So this comes up here, and we're like, shit, man, if he contests that, we don't hold that middle objective. That could swing things back towards the Germans. So we fire, I kid you not, at this thing. We fire 2 medium anti-tank guns at it, a heavy howitzer, and 4 mortars. And we even get like an anti-tank rifle on the side armor as well. And we even assault it. Because we try and hit it on like 6s. We even assault it. Nothing. Both Su-76s miss. The heavy, everything, we don't get a hit. Everything I just described missed. Couldn't get a hit. Oh, that is 2 medium. That's 2 medium anti-tank guns, 4 mortars, a heavy howitzer, and an anti-tank rifle with a side shot. 8. Look how many pins this thing's. Oh no, maybe we do get some hits, but then we don't pen. We get lots of hits, but we can't pen it. That's it. We get hits, but nothing can penetrate. Clearly, the ammunition that had been supplied to these guns was something that was some substandard ammunition. You know, the order came down from above. Production quotas had to be met. They had to make double the amount of artillery shells, so they just halved the amount of powder in each one. I don't know what was going on, but no matter what we threw at this Panzer IV, it would not die. And so that objective ended up being contested. And so we didn't score any points for it. But all was not lost, as over on the left flank, you can follow the trail of burning tanks. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can follow the trail of burning tanks. Over on the left flank, we were able to take this objective, and we were like, yes! Yes, we've got it. That's going to be 4 points for holding the front objectives, 3 points. We hold this. We don't just contest it. We full-blown hold it. That's going to give us 7 points. The Germans are going to hold 2 back objectives. That's going to be 6 points. Then we're going to get this. By 1 point, we're going to get this. But then, the veteran King Tiger, the Tiger Ace, the most expensive unit on the board, rolls into action. Now, this thing had 2 pins on it. It passes its order test. It conducts a tank shock, pushing a unit of Soviet infantry out of the way and getting within 3 inches of the train cart to contest it. The last move that the only thing the Soviets can do to deal with this, because all of our other, this is the last one, the last dice of the game. There's only 2 dice left. This one for the Germans, 1 for the Soviets. The only thing that we could do to stop this would be this unit of engineers here, armed with the Panzerfaust and a flamethrower. They move within 6 inches. They roll for the Panzerfaust. It's a miss. I imagine at that point the King Tiger did its best Snape impression. You dare use my own spells against me, Potter? Turns out Panzerfausts are only good when operated by the Germans. And the flamethrower. All we needed was a 3. We get a 3. We can stack on. This thing's still got a pin on it. We get a 3. We will do an average of 3 more pins this thing. It will be at leadership 6, and it will then have to take a panic test, which could wipe it out. All we need to do is get that hit, and we roll a big, fat, stinky 1. And not only that, but afterwards, to rub salt in the wound, we roll a 1 for fuel. So it turns out that this flamethrower, which had been huffed all the way up the board from pretty much the beginning of the game, never had any fuel in it to begin with. Again, I am blaming goddamn Soviet logistics here. They were like, here's flamethrower, comrade, but there's no fuel. Fuel comes later. Fuel comes later. The order says to assign you flamethrower, not to assign you flamethrower and fuel. And so, with the King Tiger conducting its fantastic, almost last dice of the game maneuver, it means that we hold 1 train cart, the one on the left flank, and we hold the German objective on the left flank, giving us 5 points. But the Germans hold 2 backfield objectives, giving them 6 points, and the other 2 midfield objectives are contested, leading to a very close, but very well deserved German victory. And with that epic climactic conclusion, the game did come to an end. Very well played to both sides. It really did feel like the momentum was on the Soviet side for a lot of that game. And I think that our plan went reasonably well. If you look at what we tried to do, we wanted to get to one of the backfield objectives, and we absolutely tried that, and we absolutely achieved that as well. In terms of orders, we were told to break through. We broke through. But I think what we took for granted, full disclosure, full honesty, no point in trying to sugarcoat this. I think we took for granted that we would hold the middle objectives, and it took us too long to really appreciate that a tank could go 18 inches and contest an objective. We didn't, because all of our armor was over here, our anti-tank was severely limited on the other side of the board. I think, and there was a bit of a traffic jam over here. The IS-2, there was a couple of turns where the IS-2 couldn't fire. One of the T-34s couldn't fire. My BA6 basically didn't fire the entire game. There was another BA6. We did try a Hail Mary, by the way, going 48 inches down the road with this BA6 here, but we couldn't quite get onto this objective because we couldn't contested it. Didn't quite get that, unfortunately. But I think if we'd brought the ISU, one T70, the ISU and the T3476, and had both BA6s here, and then we'd had the BT7, the T26, the ISU 152, and the SU-76s. I think if we'd had all of our armor here, rather than like 70% of it here, 15% here, 15% here, I think if we'd actually had a concentrated front, we could have stopped that Tiger push. Yeah. We got a little tunnel visioned here. The Germans played it perfectly. I think they held and held and held. And you could see there were several times when they launched perfect counterattacks. When they had the German squad back here, which pushed in, which then delayed us for a turn over here, knocking out one of my conscript squads, blocking the entrance here with the KV. Bringing over supporting fire from the King Tiger to stop another T-34 there. The push from the veterans here, I think, really, which concentrated us on them so much that it meant the Panzer IV could go through and do its thing. And then, of course, the King Tiger just going and just going straight for it. Yeah, I think the Germans, they had a very, very good defensive plan. The Soviet plan was sledgehammer. The German plan was definitely based around well-timed counter-attacks. And some of you might be thinking, but if you had your armor more spread out, then we might not have made it to here. That is a good point. But I think what's important to note is that we actually lost 2 tanks here. 2 important tanks, the KV and a T-34-85, to the King Tiger. Just slinging shots over. If the King Tiger had been occupied, because there was Su-76s slamming shots into it, there was an ISU slamming shots into it, I think if the King Tiger had been occupied, then the KV and the T-34 here would have lived, which would have meant that we wouldn't have needed the ISU and stuff to follow up and be part of a second wave of tanks. So, lesson learned. Too much armor concentrated in one spot. Spread the armor out a little bit. Draw the attention away. And that way we may have even been able to move our armor up and made a line of tanks towards the end of the game, stopping this push here. But by having all of our tanks here, it severely limited our anti-tank elsewhere. And if you look, after we took out with the mortars, the armor that realistically could die to mortars, none of the German armor really took any punishment. Although it's important to not over exaggerate. I think we were very unlucky not to get that Panzer III. I think 2 medium anti-tank guns and a heavy howitzer should have probably got it. The fact that we then had 4 medium mortars on top of that and an anti-tank rifle, yeah, we're needing 6s to pen followed by 6s to set the thing on fire, but with the number of pins that we were stacking on this thing, it probably would have gone. But that is the way the cookie crumbles, and lessons learned for next time. One last thing to say, because we've talked about tactics there. Lessons learned in terms of the mission. I think considering the size of the board, I do think that the objectives being this far back was a very difficult goal for the Soviets. If you bear in mind the fact that if the Soviets even the Soviets take all 3 of these objectives, we can't win the game. It makes it somewhat easier for the Germans to just be like, well, we'll just sit back and hold these 3. Now they didn't, and because we've kind of forced their hand here, they did have to come after the middle. So maybe what I'm saying is a bit moot. But I think we would have had a slightly better chance if the objectives, maybe rather than being here, had been here. It would have taken us 1 less turn to get there, which might have enabled us to spread our armor out a bit more without risking diluting it. Because I think it's a bit of a catch-22. Because if we don't put all of our armor here and we do spread it out, there's a chance that against those Panzerfaust we just can't break through. So I would say lessons learned for improving the scenario next time. These things should be somewhat more in the middle of the German line, not the back, not the rear area. But hey, even with all that said, we did push through. We did take one of those objectives, and we did do it at great cost. It actually, I think it cost us 5 Soviet tanks, 4 or 5 Soviet tanks, to get that that objective over on the Soviet left flank. In terms of armor casualties, the Soviets took horrendous casualties. The BT-7 went down, the KV-1 went down, all 3 of my T-34s went down. We also, I think, we lost another vehicle somewhere as well. Pretty certain. Oh, one of the other tanks was basically knocked out. It was immobilized and then like turret jammed and everything. So you could easily say 6 Soviet vehicles knocked out of action. The Germans only lost 2. They only lost the Marder and they lost 3. So the Germans lost the Marder and they lost the 2 half tracks here. So yeah, but I suppose the Germans didn't have as many tanks. When you think about it, the total German tanks were a Stug, a Panzer IV, a Marder, and a King Tiger. Everything else was transports and infantry. So the Germans did not bring a lot of armor, and the Soviets brought... How many pieces did the Germans have then? If we include all transports, they had 2 Hanemags, a truck, Panzer IV, Marder, Stug, King Tiger. 7 vehicles on the board. And they had a bike. 8 vehicles on the board, counting everything. The Soviets had... Well, I brought 5. And then we had another BA-6, an ISU, an IS-2, 2 Su-76s, the BT-7, the T-26, T-34 76, and then we had 2 Cosmoplots, and we had 2 trucks. Well, 17 pieces of armor versus 17 vehicles all in versus 6. Wow, pretty much outnumbered them 3-1 in terms of tanks. But it turned out that tanks were not the answer. It turned out that, as always, it comes down to the infantryman and his rifle. Or in this case, Panzerfaust. But overall, a fantastic game, and really looking forward to the next one. And the next one is actually already in the works. So if you enjoyed this, we actually have another scenario planned, and that will be coming up in June, July time. So we're going to be doing D-Day. It will be D-Day. It's going to be a 2-dayer this time. Friday is going to be the power drops. Friday evening is going to be power drops, and then Saturday is going to be the beaches. And I'm going to be on the German team. The German team has been almost the same people both times. They've been very much on the defensive, sort of sat there as getting pounded by the Soviets. So a couple of the German players have said, whilst they enjoy that, they do want to mix things up a little bit. So I'm going to be swapping with Sai, and so Simon is going to be going onto the Allied team, and I will be on the Germans. Commanding, I believe, the 352nd Infantry Division, as well as the 6th Fallschirmjäger and Panzer. So you can expect to see lots of green grenadiers in my army, and lots of late war armor as well, because honestly, I don't care if tanks aren't as effective as infantry in this game. I'm going to use a lot of tanks. That just about wraps it up. Let us know what you think down in the comment section below. Did you enjoy this battle, and what do you think I should include in my army for the D-Day scenario? If you did enjoy today's video, don't forget to go ahead and smash that like button. Doing these big games and making these videos requires a lot of time, a lot of resources, and so by simply liking it subscribing to the channel, all of that good stuff. It boosts the video, the YouTube algorithm. It helps it get more coverage. That helps it get more views. And that way we can do more content like this. That's all for now. Thank you for watching. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian glory hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members and patrons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordian Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Alex Dengal, Bon Vert, Lord Pryor, Mark Panconi, RJ Scorpion, Swordfish Trombone, Try Again Bragg, John Stubbs, Nick Walsh, Diesel Fox, and August Barney. Seriously, guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video. And of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.